Sup everyone, welcome back to another video. And in the previous video I talked about who Nilou was designed for, and in that video most people caught my drift and was able to process it along, kind of understand things a little bit. Of course there were people posing questions and of course always people disagreeing with it. Now the thing I want to point out the most was that there are definitely some misunderstandings and misconceptions as to how HoYoverse goes about conceptualizing these characters and designing them, and exactly who these characters are delivered for. As much as we want to believe that, well, HoYoverse loves us all equally and they want to please all of us equally, you know, the truth really is there endgame combat content being planned and scheduled for release? Obviously no. They've even came out and said no. So it's already apparent that HoYoverse's attention and efforts are focused towards a very specific group of players. And what is that group of players? For the most part, it's the casuals, and even for the bigger most part, if that makes any sense in this context, it's the new players. Why the new players? All right. So here's a concept that I'm sure a lot of you guys already know, and this is a very popular one on the internet, is that when something is free, you likely are the product. And it's no different in this case, right? When a game such as Genshin Impact, it's pretty costly for them to have initially developed it, and on top of that, to maintaining it and developing new content. You know, to have all this for free, there's something wrong, right? In fact, yes, for the most part, a huge amount of the cost of the game is being funded by Giga Whales, and some people told me like, oh, you know, like 10% of the players are like funding 90% of the money that the company makes. So at the end of the day, why not make characters for this 10%? Why not dedicate the resources for the 10%, right? So using Nilou as an example, I think this is a great time for us to dive into this topic, because I really think you guys for the most part don't really get it, and the audience for Genshin for the most part is younger audiences, so it's also no surprise that you guys are a little confused by how all of this works, right? So let's just get to the bare bones of this. Right now there's a situation amongst the player base where players are being cycled in and out at an alarming rate. While you guys want to believe that Genshin Impact is a dying game, I mean, at least the you guys on the internet who's constantly screaming dying game, you guys would want to think Genshin is dying, but understand HoYoverse is putting in an unholy amount of effort and likely money towards advertisements, right? A lot of this stuff, yeah, keeping the game alive is one thing, but advertising for the game, you know, outside of this is just a whole different story, and collaborations IRL and all the ads being plastered everywhere, right? All this is to make sure there's a constant stream of new players coming into the game. So now let's talk about characters. What are likely the first thing people get introduced to when you get into the game, apart from the amazing visuals, the music? It's going to be the characters. Now, with a character like Nilou being in Sumeru, it's without a doubt that newer players are going to have to make somewhat of an effort to go through content to arrive here. Now, thank goodness Sumeru isn't locked behind like an insane amount of story quests like Inazuma. So why the difference, right? Like, understand this. Why not just do it like they did for Inazuma? Why not force people to go to Inazuma first, then to Sumeru, right? Like, you catch my drift here? So the reason they're making Sumeru accessible earlier is because had they locked it behind Inazuma, and hell, like even Liyue and all the other quests, that's just gonna kill the vibe for the new players. While I do think it was important for HoYoverse to lock Inazuma characters behind Liyue and all the original story quests, it's just too much for Sumeru. And I think Sumeru is a step up from the previous stuff that they've released. They've taken what mistakes they've made in the past and changed it. Right now, there's a lot of dualities at play here. Is Nilou a great character? I think she is a good character. She's not a great character. She's not like an amazing character. I think she's a good character. She hovers somewhere around Ayato, maybe a little worse right now because the Dendro Archon is not out yet. I think once Dendro Archon comes out, she can easily surpass Ayato and maybe just slot right between Ayato and Yelan. That's roughly where I think she's gonna end up. Now, saying Nilou is being designed for newer players did rub people the wrong way a little bit. And most of what I saw was that, like, how can Nilou be made for newer players when she synergizes with Dendro, and it's such a niche character, which on top of being Dendro exclusive, she is Bloom exclusive as well. So how can you say a new player can enjoy this, whereas is this not something to funnel older players and veteran players into a more unique playstyle, right? Like, that's the argument. So this is where I say there's a lot of dualities happening with Nilou. So here's the thing, right? I believe Hoyoverse wants newer players to experience what the current content and meta has to offer. The old stuff, while is good and extremely powerful, I mean, some of the most powerful teams were released back in 1.0 or even patch 2.0. Now 3.0 has just started to bear its fangs, and Hoyoverse wants newer players to not look to the past but rather to the future. There's a lot of dodgy stuff that happened in the past, and it doesn't really bode well for Hoyoverse for newer players to already dwell on the past, and it's a past that they've never even experienced for themselves. It's much better to get players looking forward, getting excited for new things, as opposed to living in the past and trying to wait for those past to rerun. Does that make sense? I mean, as a company, you would want people to get excited about what's coming next, as opposed to people living in nostalgia of what's already happened. Now, that also is one of the reasons why I think Nilou, Sino, all these characters are coming out first, and then eventually they roll into Nahida, and even then they're gonna have people excited for characters coming down the line. Okay, so that's one thing. The other thing we have to talk about, which is slightly touched upon in my previous video, is that Nilou is designed for free-to-plays or casual players. Now, here's the thing, right? I've started to hear people say that Nilou C2 is going to work extremely well with Nahida. Now, I don't know where people got this information from, but that's the thing. Is like, oh, well, are you saying that C2 working with the Dendro Archon, so 2 limited characters, that's free-to-play friendly? Well, you see, here's the thing, right? Right now, Nilou functions perfectly fine and can get up to around 30k Super Bloom hits. Completely free to play team, working with Barbara, working with Dendro MC and Kale, and don't argue with me with Kale, you get 2 copies for free, and C0 Nilou with a free to play weapon that has like HP substat. That's it. So you tell me, is that not free to play friendly? And each Super Bloom can proc up to 30k, and you can get like, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 happening all over the place. So it's just, I don't know, 240k sounds pretty damn good for me, in my opinion, right? 240k every couple seconds sounds pretty damn good to me, and you do it all passively. You don't have to worry about it. It kind of targets the mobs as long as you have Dendro and Hydro on them. The job's done. All right, so that's on one side of things. However, what about the whales? Because let's be honest, there's 2 sides to the coin. We already talked about the first half. What about the second half? The whales, the spenders, is the other side of the coin here, right? You can't just have one product cater towards one demographic. The ideal situation is you have one product at different stages and different tiers or different investments. Now we're talking monetary because of constellations. At C0, Nilou is capable of this. At C1, she's capable of this. At C2, she's capable of this. As each tier you climb up, you unlock different power levels, and that's what constellations are. It's for people who have different spending tiers. If you're somebody who can drop $100, sure, go ahead. Then you can access that first tier, C1. If you're somebody who can drop $400, that's maybe C2, right? It's a well-designed monetary system. That's why we go back to the first thing that I said in the video. If something is free, you are the product. Right now, Hoyoverse needs newer players to come in, offer new characters, get excited for newer characters, and continue to play their game. Nilou is a well-designed character that has taken everything Hoyoverse has mastered up until this point. C0, pretty damn good. In fact, she's arguably the most free-to-play Sumeru character, and actually the most free-to-play character, in my opinion, 5-star limited character released in a while now. I can't even think of the last really free-to-play C0 3-star weapon character dealing as much damage or being as good as Nilou. And I do have to agree that the Dendro reactions have all been very, very powerful. And to compensate for that, the characters themselves oftentimes have lower stats or lower scaling because their reactions to the Dendro reactions, they're just so immensely powerful. And I think it's the same case with Nilou being focused on Bloom, and I'm sure Bergen will have their own team comps coming in the future, which also is going to be extremely powerful. But in this video, I really just want to hammer home that just because one thing is true doesn't mean the other one is false, right? In this case, is just because Nilou is free-to-play friendly doesn't mean she cannot be whale friendly as well. It's such a weird sentence to say, whale friendly. Like, just because she's free-to-play friendly doesn't mean whales can't spend money and make her even more powerful. Two things can exist at the same time. They're not codependent and they're not correlated, but rather coexisting with no direct relations to each other. Now, a lot of people would hear me say this and say like, oh, are you saying Nilou's broken? You're saying she's the perfect character? I'm not saying that. I'm saying Nilou neither breaks any damage ceilings, nor does she fall into the realm of mediocrity or inadequacy. I think Nilou is a character that is going to rise up in the ranks as time goes on. She does kind of feel like a Kokomi type character. You know how Kokomi first came out, people were like, she's okay. And then as newer characters came out that work with Kokomi, got her artifact set, blah, 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 started feeling really damn good. And fast forward to today, one of the staples in many teams. I think it's going to be a similar situation with Nilou. For people who are wanting to pull for Nahida or even multiple constellations of Nahida, skipping Nilou is fine. But I do think on her rerun, she's going to be much more popular than she is right now. Okay, that's all I'm saying. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as you guys see, if you guys comment, I will likely make videos off of your responses. This video was sparked by responses from my previous videos, so thank you guys so much, and I look forward to seeing your responses in this video. What do you think of Nilou? Is she a good character? Is she a bad character? I honestly think she's a great character. She's sitting very nicely in her current position. So till next time, urge you all to stay safe and peace. Bye.